Hi everyone, I'm teacher Mitsuko from Riders of Work, and today I'll be giving you some very helpful editing tips for your O-level paper. Now let's go through a passage together, line by line. Here we go. Louis Pugh was a star. He dived into an ocean situated along the edge of an Arctic ice pack and experienced the more intense cold of his life. You have your first erroneous word here, which is more. You use more. More is actually a comparative adjective. You use it when you're comparing one thing to another, or when you're talking about differences between two people or two things. However, that's not the case in this sentence, because we're talking about the highest degree of coldness that Pugh has felt in his life. So we're supposed to use superlative, which expresses the lowest or highest degree of equality. So the superlative version of more is most. To give you a few more examples, you use better when you're comparing, and then we're talking about the highest, among everything else, you use best. Okay, this room is cleaner than that room I'm comparing, but I'm gonna say this room is the cleanest among all the rooms I've seen in my life. That's a superlative. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's move on. It was a swim to promote awareness of the threats climate change posed to oceans. You have your second error here, which is the word pose. Now, why? It refers to the word climate change. Climate change is singular. Therefore, we also need the singular version of pose. We add an S. It should be poses. All right? Now, once out of the water, Pugh was transferred as quickly as possible to a hot shower when he stayed. If you understood the line, he stayed in the hot shower. It's an area, it's a place. You're not supposed to use when you're referring to a place. You're supposed to use the word where. All right? So out of the water, Pugh was transferred as quickly as possible to a hot shower where he stayed, seated in a chair for an hour until his body temperature returned to normal. There's no error in number 4, so we take it. Now, experts say that for people who has not trained as Mr. Pugh has, we have an error here. If you pay close attention, has is wrong. Because once again, ask yourself, it's referring to what? People. And people is singular or plural? That's more than one person, so it's plural. We're supposed to use have. For people who have not trained as Mr. Pugh has, the temperatures with which he was contending would have been fatal. Most people would die within a very short time. No error in this line. We have our second tick. You already have 2 ticks, therefore the rest we'll have to look for the error in each line. Okay? Most people would die within a very short time, said Tim Noakes, a physiologist who has worked on Pugh since 2003. Sounds a bit weird because there's another error here, which is the word on. Now, when you analyze this word, you analyze this together with the word worked, because worked and on combined is considered a phrasal verb. Now, to remind you, a phrasal verb is a phrase that combines a verb with a preposition or an adverb or both. So usually it's 2 words or 3 words sometimes. So take in, take off, look down on, like that. Okay? Now, another thing you should be reminded of is that once you combine the verb and the preposition or the adverb, the phrase will have a different meaning from its separate parts. Okay? And there's a lot of possibilities, like, for example, the verb take, you can pair it with different prepositions. Take in, take off, take out. And they all have different meanings. So work on is different from work with, work around, and work out. For this sentence, since Louis Pugh works together with Tim Noakes, it shouldn't be work on, it should be worked with. Tim Noakes worked with Mr. Pugh. All right? When you work on something, you're trying to improve it. But if somebody's helping another person to do something, that's worked with. Okay? Now let's move on to the next line. He explained that cold water caused one to hyperventilate. Now, error, the word cause, this error has appeared in the previous number. The cold water is singular. Therefore, we have to use singular for cause, which is causes. And if you pay attention to the entire sentence, look at this. Cold water causes one to hyperventilate, increases the pH levels of the blood, and leads to reduced blood flow to the brain. Increases and leads are still referring to the cold water, and they're both singular. So that would give you a clue. Cost should be singular too as well. The sentence has to be parallel. So please pay attention to the clues in your sentence. Okay? Now let's move on. Asking if he would ever repeat it. Wrong word for. Asking should be asked, past tense. Asked if he would ever repeat it. Piyush shook his head. I'll be fighting for a protection of the polar regions until my last day. First glance, you think there's no error here, but there is. The article are. You use are when it's indefinite. You're not talking about something definite, but you're talking about the protection of the polar regions. You know the specific thing that you want to protect. So for the protection of what? Of the polar regions. We're talking about something definite here. So we use a definite article, which is the. Okay? I'll be fighting for the protection of the polar regions until my last day. Once you've been there, you don't want to go there again. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope these tips have been helpful for you. Once again, this is Teacher Mitsuko from Writers at Work.